Hey there, welcome to week 37. Seriously. And this week we're talking about the quest card. And it is the fable of, I'm just going to move this a little so that we're not so, okay. And it is the fable of, gosh, I can't figure out why this is doing this. I'm just trying to not put, oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to move over a little. So we are talking about the quest card, which is the fable of Navy Trail. And what's interesting is a couple weeks ago, I pulled this card out and I was like, oh, it's time to do this, Navy Trail fable. And I pulled it out and I did half the video and then I realized I was on the wrong week. Telling you. So don't try to record during a Mercury retrograde if you're talking spiritual stuff. Okay. So one of the things, and I want to point out a couple things in this card, so I want to show it to you. As you look at the image on here, notice that behind the woman, there are two different visions of one. They both have images of pussy willows. One has a swamp and the other doesn't have a swamp. So I want you to also notice that she is on her path, which is what the fable's about, partly. And notice how in this fable, the older woman goes to the wise youngster in the tribe, in the community. And part of this is that, oftentimes we make assumptions about who will bring us wisdom and who won't. And one of the things that I was always struck with this fable was the fact that this was the wise youngster. This was not, the wise elder. This is the young one in the tribe. So the focus, and this was interesting because I remember when this fable came through, it says, when I am somewhere else, my life will have meaning. And I think that's a big part of wanting to create something bigger than yourself, wanting to be in a bigger arena in your life. And let's face it, we are in the fifth chakra, I think seven. I was thinking seven because it's the seventh card. It's the final card. So here we go, guys. Start yawning. So because it's in the seventh placement of the fifth chakra, remember that the fifth chakra as communication, it's communicating higher minded connections. And of course, one of the things that happens is that it's going to mix up what we think to be true and just say, hey, this is what's going on. So I want to say that to you because I think one of the things that happens sometimes, especially in this type of work, is we end up thinking, oh, we have these preconceived notions like, the wise man in the tribe. Well, why not a wise youngster? And I think that when we look at this, this fable has a lot to do with challenging our brain to kind of like go, well, wait a minute, that shouldn't be a young child as the wisdom. What? And yet at the same time, our intuition says, of course, why not? Because our intuition is always saying that. Now, seventh chakra issues become universal consciousness. So that can be the communication of universal consciousness. But sometimes one of the things that I've seen happen is that people are so, I want to say, convinced of how much they know or how spiritual they are, that they try to over pontificate or be the first one to tell you what their issues are. And it really is one of the things that we have to watch here. And I think this is a key in this is that, I've had this happen where I'm doing a reading and I say, okay, so what I'm seeing is that maybe there's an energy here of some kind of withholding, and the person will say, yes, I've worked on my issues around withholding, and I am, I can be very selfish, and I can be this and that. And I'm like, that is an awful quick jump from I'm feeling the energy of withholding to the person reporting on themselves. And one of the tendencies in this kind of work is sometimes we can think that because we've done so much spiritual work and because we've done so, I want to say self-awareness, if you will, because we've done so much of that kind of work, what happens is we think we can then go, oh, well, I've done so much of this work, so therefore this is the solution. And I know it's all about me not doing my work. Well, you know, what if it's not about you? And that's something interesting too, is that when I find that self-awareness can only take us so far, because sometimes we do need to hear the feedback from another person. And just to give you an example, as I'm staying with that conversation, here I go again, as I'm staying with that conversation, you know, I'll say, well, and I'm talking about a particular client. Well, I'm thinking about, I think what's coming forward to me is I'm feeling a connection with the mother, with your mother, and an energy of withholding. And the client, that she was like, oh, yeah, my mother was very withholding and she was very rough. And I'm like, well, let's back up a little, because again, you see, this is the client knowing everything already. So why are they like coming for a reading when what they really want is to just feel safe? They want to feel safe. But the thing is, they're seeking an answer that their intuition is trying to tell them. Sometimes we seek other people out, not so much to get a future reading, but to get a validation of how to move to the next level. Even if we think we know how to do it, kind of getting the idea of how to do it. So when we look at a fable like Quest, and the actual name, the card is named Quest, and the fable is, it's the fable of the Navy Trail. You know, when we think of the word quest, we think of like going on a quest. We go somewhere to get something. And yet, one of the things that happened in that particular reading, as I go back to the story, is that my client was saying, you know, well, yeah, my mother's very withholding. And I was thinking, well, wait a minute. I don't know if that's the message. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, I don't know yet. I said, I haven't really gotten there, but I know that by your telling me, there is, what I'm feeling is an energy of, oh, I know already. And it was interesting, because what my client then said was, yeah, you know what, I kind of feel like I've done all this already. I've done all this work. I just want to move on to the next thing. And what's interesting is what we skip stops us. So one of the things, and that has a lot to do with the story, because in the actual fable, you know, so many people just assume that there's something there, so they just skip it. They just don't go that far because they know that there is a swamp there. But actually, when the elder, the older woman, keeps going on her path, she discovers there is nothing stopping her. So one of the things that happens is, if we know already all of our answers, then there is no room to energetically shift. So I said to my client, then what brought you here? And she's like, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, one of the things that I notice is that when I have a know-it-all energy going, it's because I just don't want to look at something, but yet I'm trying to build something, and I can't build on quicksand. And so what I'm hearing is that. And she was like, oh, I said, so may I continue? And she was like, yeah. And so what I then relayed to her was that it felt like, energetically, like there was someone she was working with who was very withholding, but it was familiar to her. And she thought that a lot of the new age speak was going to help in this communication. So I said to her, I feel like there's someone that is very challenging for you to speak to, but you are, I want to say, acquiescing to him because you think he knows more than you, right? And she said, well, yes, he is a little younger than me. However, he's had more life experience than me. And I said, however, he's a very withholding person. And she said, well, that's because that's my reflection. I said, I don't know. She's like, well, I get that I've been withholding and my mom's withholding, you know, I really worked through that. And I said, well, if you worked through it, why are you here? And she said, because I want this deal to work. I want it to work. And I said, well, let me ask you something. If you were building something on quicksand, would it work? She said, of course not. And I said, well, energetically, your intuition brought you here because you know there's something not right. And I'm wondering what that thing is. And because I've told you what I'm feeling, do you have any idea? And she slowly slid into the idea that, oh, I get it. She said, I'm playing it out. I said, yeah, I would say that's accurate if that feels accurate to you. And she's like, yes. So what I meant by that is I allowed her the space to get that she didn't want to hear what I had to say, but she came here to hear what she had to say. And sometimes I think when we're reading cards or we're doing intuitive work, the tendency is to feel that pressure to give somebody an answer, when at the end of the day, she didn't want my answer. She wasn't going to listen to it. I gave her a couple of them, right? But what she would listen to is when I looked, you know, I gave her that tonality. You know, I always joke with my dogs and go, are you going to give me that tone of nose? So it's kind of like giving that tonality of, I wonder if you're building on the thing you want to build on. So what this fable, what this story is really about is, are you doubting your path? Are you building on what you really want to build on? Or are you withholding something from yourself and thinking someone else has a better idea about where you need to be than you? And that's what I meant, and I've talked about this before, the idea of a spiritual bypass, of like using, you know, some kind of pontificating of like, oh, I know the problem, and energetically I've had many lives with this person. It's like, I don't care how many lives you've had right now, really, because in this moment and in the dialogue I have, it's more, even if you know all that, even if all of that is true, what brought you to this place right now in this moment? And so when we look at the quest card or the fable of the Navy trail, we know that the road, the trail, Navy, is true blue. It's honesty, it's being true. So we know that Navy is going to be that reflection of something true that you need to know or need to hear or need to accept. And so you can see how just in the dialogue with my client, she found her answer. And one of the things that happens, and I'm finding this more and more in the work I do, in that when I'm working with people, it really comes down to the meaning they made of a particular experience. And so a lot of times I find that my work is really around looking at the meaning that was made and how do we rewire it, you know, because it's the old thing of like, if you have something wired wrong, it's just not going to come out, you know, you're going to have to turn the light down to go on and up to go, you know, and it's having things wired backwards. Now it'll still work. However, there's a chance that something may not. And do you want to stop and find out and get it wired correctly for yourself? And that, you know. Okay, so let's take a look at the message of the week, because I think that's really key. This message this week has to do with the seventh chakra, because it is, although it's a fifth chakra, it's seventh chakra energy because it's in the seventh position. And it really is the unspoken communication, the communication that spirit gives us, that we get from, if you will, our higher self. And the other thing that's very important in this is we discover it's never too late. I think sometimes there's that tendency to think that it's too late to do X, Y, Z, or, you know, that opportunity is gone. And while it may be true that at 48 you'll no longer be a linebacker or play professional football, it doesn't mean that you don't have the ability to go the distance and win the game. See, I think we have to look at why, the idea of that kind of choice, and what can the choice be of allowing you to be a part of that winning team, that winning, I want to say, combination. So that becomes part of, yes, looking at where we are, like the older woman going to the wise youngster and saying, basically, am I on my path? And the thing is that there's nothing wrong with checking in and seeing where we are. Let's see. Oh, this is about, this week, it is really about taking on the energetic level of curiosity and being inquisitive, and we've heard this kind of dynamic talked about before, but the idea of, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know that's true? Well, because I saw it and this is what I know. Oh, okay. It's so funny. I've taught classes, as some of you know, and, you may have been in one of my classes, but when I teach a class, I'll say to somebody, and I remember I do this, quite a bit. I'll go, how do you know? And they'll go, I don't know. Or, they'll say, well, I know because of XYZ. And it's interesting to see some people go into upset. Some people start to change their mind. And what's important is how we relate to the issue is the issue. So if it's like, what do you mean, how do I know? If you're doubting yourself, then that is the issue, not me questioning it. So if we took it from a neutral stance and just said, if I say to you, how do you know? And I've had clients say to me, because I saw the person cash the check and take the money. Oh, okay. And they go, that's it. Because I'm asking a question, and a lot of times I'm in inquiry. And I think one of the things, we are trained in nuances, right? So we're trained in the tonality of, well, how do you know that? Or and automatically it means there's questioning. And what I'm saying is that, what does that mean to you? Is also a way that I will say, what meaning have you made of that? So if I saw this in the house, right, and you see this in the house, right, you might say, oh, a woman with long hair lives here, or someone left it, or, in other words, we make meaning of what this means to us being in a particular place. Now, let's say, for example, right, you're married and you're a brunette and you find this in your bed with blonde hair in it, you might have a conversation with your husband about it, or significant other. Now, when I say that, we're putting things in context. If you just find this on the street outside, it doesn't mean anything in that sense. You just found it on the street. But where we place things is what makes the difference in our lives, and the meaning we make of that. So if I told you, oh, I found this in the bed with blonde hair, and my cleaning person has blonde hair and she wears these all the time, I might think, hey, did you lose? Oh, yeah, I was wondering what happened to it. So sometimes we can make an assumption about a certain thing, but we don't know what it means. And that's why when I'm working with people, I'll say, how do you know? Or what does that mean to you? Because, again, the way you're interpreting it will show me what is going on internally with you. And then that gives me an opportunity to just ask you questions that will strike your intuition and bring answers forward that you may not have thought of in your conscious mind, but your subconscious or your intuition has been trying to tell you this for a long time. And I can't tell you how many times I've had this happen with friends where, a friend of mine's daughter will call me up and go, and this is what's happening. And, she recently got married, and she called me up, and she was in upset and about some stuff and what was going on with her girlfriend, and trying to figure it out. And I gave her some suggestions, and it worked out. But it was funny because when I talked to her mother, and I said, oh yeah, her mother said, I've been telling her that for years. She does not listen to me. Well, the thing is, it's like, the right words, the wrong person, because the words may come through with a tonality that is not supportive to that person. And so, you know, and again, you know, it's just legend that we don't hear from our parents, but we'll hear it from a stranger. So that said, let's take a look here at one of the things that's very important here is that this week I really want you to look at the idea that you are further along on your journey than you may be giving yourself credit for. And I think that this is a time when the old fear-based system is being replaced with an intuitive knowing system surrounded by truth. Now, think of it as not a bad or good thing, but just, oh, the hot water heater doesn't work. I need a new one. You get a new one, right? It doesn't mean that you're bad if the hot water heater stopped working. It's just that we're replacing or upgrading. And this is about replacing and upgrading old beliefs and old ideas. Let's see. The thing that is the biggest thing here also is what shows up that can challenge your previous preconceived notions about things, and challenge your perception, challenge you to see something a different way. This week, I think you're going to find a lot of necessity on looking at how far you've come, validating yourself, and being true, being honest about it, because that navy blue will not let you get away with, you know, fudging stuff. And let's see. Courage and determination are a large part of navy blue. You're going to find that in the color reflection and, of course, the journal journey this week. I really love the solo exercise. I'm not going to share it with you. And I really love the group exercise here. And I would encourage you maybe to try to do both with a group and with your, you know, on your own. And of course, the Friday meditation. So I want to say that this is your full circle with communication. And next week, we start the 6th chakra cards, which were all about family of origin, hidden family agreements, and also your I want to say incomplete agreements and completed agreements, as well as your psychic sense. So next week, we're going to start with that 6th chakra, but this week, really look at this as declaring complete. And please post below how far you've come in this year. Really what came up for you in either the reflection or the feedback exercise in the book. So I look forward to seeing you next week. You'll have a great week. And remember, be kind to each other.